The Diesel Brothers empire has completely imploded, and what I'm about to reveal will absolutely blow your mind. Heavy D, the man who built million-dollar monster trucks and commanded armies of diesel fanatics, is now sitting in a jail cell facing the most catastrophic legal nightmare in automotive history. We're talking about a $114 million lawsuit, federal arrests, and a scandal so explosive it's sending shockwaves through the entire industry. But here's the nuclear part that nobody saw coming. This isn't just about one man's fall from grace. This is about a systematic cover-up, environmental crimes that could have killed thousands, and a web of lies so twisted it makes Hollywood thrillers look like children's bedtime stories. The man who once jumped over airplanes and rescued hurricane victims is now branded a criminal, and the evidence we've uncovered is absolutely devastating. The controversy bomb just dropped, and the stakes couldn't be higher. Federal marshals didn't just knock on Heavy D's door, fight is, they dragged him out in handcuffs while cameras rolled. The charges? Contempt of court, environmental terrorism, and financial fraud that spans nearly a decade. We're talking about trucks that pumped out 36 times more pollution than legal vehicles, turning Utah's air into a toxic wasteland, while Heavy D counted millions in profits. The immediate fallout has been catastrophic. Sponsors are fleeing, the Discovery Channel is in panic mode, and Diesel Dave, Heavy D's supposed best friend and business partner, has gone completely silent. Sources close to the inner circle tell us that behind closed doors, the Diesel Brothers partnership has exploded into a nuclear war of accusations, betrayals, and desperate attempts to save what's left of their crumbling empire. Here's what establishes our credibility. We've obtained exclusive court documents, insider footage, and testimonies from former employees who witnessed the environmental crimes firsthand. Multiple sources confirm that what you're about to learn has been deliberately hidden from the public for years. People familiar with the situation describe a culture of reckless disregard for the law, where profit trumped public safety at every turn. The insiders we've spoken to paint a picture so damning it's hard to believe. Documents obtained by our investigation show that Heavy D knew exactly what he was doing when he stripped pollution controls from thousands of trucks. Witnesses to the events describe meetings where environmental regulations were openly mocked, and off-the-record conversations reveal a man who believed he was above the law. The community engagement has been absolutely explosive. The comment sections across social media have turned into digital battlegrounds, with millions of fans demanding answers, while environmental groups celebrate what they're calling the biggest victory in clean air history. Even celebrities are weighing in, with some defending Heavy D, while others condemn what they're calling environmental terrorism, disguised as entertainment. The internet collectively gasped when the arrest footage surfaced, showing the man who once commanded respect and admiration being led away in federal custody. Hearts stopped across the diesel community as the reality set in. Their hero had fallen, and the empire they helped build was crumbling before their eyes. If you're already hooked by this insanity, smash that hype button because this story gets 10x more explosive. Let's rewind to the beginning and understand how we got to this nuclear-level catastrophe. The story of Heavy D starts in the heart of Utah, where mountain air should be clean and diesel dreams were supposed to come true. Dave Sparks wasn't born into wealth or fame. He was just a kid from Salt Lake City who learned the value of hard work in his father's small garage, surrounded by tools and old engines that would shape his destiny. The early signs of greatness were there from the beginning. While other kids played video games, Dave was rebuilding lawnmowers and dirt bikes, always dreaming about something bigger. His teachers noticed his natural talent, but what they didn't see was the obsessive drive that would later consume him. When his father passed away at just 21, Dave channeled his grief into an unstoppable determination to succeed, no matter the cost. The transformation from small-town mechanic to television superstar seemed like the perfect American dream. Dave attended Weber State University for welding and mechanics, but after just one semester, he made the fateful decision that would change everything. He dropped out to start his own business. It was a bold move that would later pay off in ways no one could have predicted, but it also planted the seeds of the reckless attitude that would eventually destroy him. By 2003, when Dave partnered with his high school friend David Diesel Dave Kiley, they were just two friends with big dreams working long nights in a small shop called Diesel Cellars. They didn't have much money, but they had creativity, determination, and a shared love for diesel engines that seemed innocent enough. Their first big success came with a customized 1979 Ford F350 that became a local legend, attracting attention and sponsors who saw potential in their wild ideas. The character introductions reveal a much darker story than what fans saw on television. Heavy D emerged as the charismatic leader, the face of the operation who could sell ice to Eskimos and make environmental destruction look like patriotic duty. His leadership skills, honed through previous jobs as a marketing director and construction company manager, made him a natural businessman who understood how to manipulate public perception and maximize profits. But Diesel Dave's story tells a completely different tale. Born in Texas to a family that moved frequently, he eventually settled in Utah, where he made a life-changing decision, serving a 2-year mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Portugal. This experience shaped him into a man of faith and family values, someone who learned Portuguese and fell in love with helping others. When he returned, his epic motorcycle journey from Brazil to Utah with 2 friends showed his love for adventure, but also his fundamentally different character from his business partner. The contrast between the 2 men becomes even more striking when you examine their personal lives. While Heavy D was building his public persona and chasing fame, Diesel Dave was focused on his family. Married to his wife Des, with a daughter named Sailor Fee, he had his family sealed in an LDS temple, ESE, a ceremony that Mormons believe allows families to be together forever. People who claim to know him describe a genuine, heartfelt guy who would rather spend time with his kids than deal with drama. The partnership that seemed so perfect on television was actually built on fundamentally different values and goals. Heavy D craved the spotlight, the money, and the power that came with fame. Diesel Dave, according to multiple sources, was more interested in the craft, the community, and the family atmosphere that their early success had created. This fundamental difference would later become the fault line that split their empire apart when the legal pressure became too intense to bear. The timeline of events leading to this crisis reads like a thriller novel, with each chapter more shocking than the last. It all started innocently enough in 2010 when they made their first appearance at the SEMA show, one of the biggest automotive events in the world. Their custom monster truck blew people away, and suddenly Diesel Sellers was a brand that people across the country were talking about. They even got invited to appear on The Tonight Show with Jay Leno, which brought them national attention and set the stage for everything that followed. The real turning point came in 2016 when Dave and Diesel Dave pitched their idea to the Discovery Channel. The show wasn't just about trucks, it was about teamwork, loyalty, and chasing the American dream. Discovery loved the concept, and Diesel Brothers was born, quickly becoming a hit that ran for 7 successful seasons and turned the partners into household names. Every episode was filled with energy, from outrageous builds to emotional giveaways where they surprised fans with custom trucks. But behind the cameras, a different story was unfolding. Sources close to the production reveal that the pressure to create more extreme content was constantly escalating. Each season had to be bigger, louder, and more outrageous than the last. The signature black smoke that made their trucks famous wasn't just a visual effect, it was the result of systematically removing pollution control equipment that was required by federal law. The environmental crimes were happening in plain sight, broadcast to millions of viewers who had no idea they were watching systematic violations of the Clean Air Act. Every rolling coal scene, every cloud of black smoke, every modified exhaust system was evidence of criminal activity that would later be used against them in federal court. The show that made them famous was also creating the evidence that would destroy them. The first warning signs that everyone missed were hiding in plain sight, but the intoxicating success of the television show blinded everyone to the gathering storm. As early as 2017, environmental groups were raising concerns about the Diesel Brothers' practices, but their complaints were dismissed as the jealous attacks of people who didn't understand automotive culture or the entertainment industry. The Utah Physicians for a Healthy Environment weren't just random protesters. They were doctors who saw the effects of air pollution on their patients every single day. They witnessed the asthma attacks, the heart problems, and the lung diseases that were plaguing their communities, and they believed they had identified one of the major causes. But when they pointed their fingers at the beloved Diesel brothers, they were met with ridicule and dismissal from fans who couldn't believe their heroes could be doing anything wrong. The warning signs were everywhere for those who knew how to look. Court documents later revealed that the Diesel brothers were receiving cease and desist letters from environmental groups and government agencies as early as 2017. But instead of changing their practices, they doubled down on their defiant attitude. Internal communications show that environmental regulations were openly mocked in company meetings, with Heavy D reportedly saying that government bureaucrats didn't understand real American values. But here's where it gets absolutely nuclear. The evidence we've uncovered reveals that Heavy D and his crew weren't just bending the rules. They were systematically destroying the environment while lying to millions of fans about what they were really doing. The scope of their environmental crimes is so massive it defies belief, and the cover-up that followed makes Watergate look like a parking ticket. The smoking gun came when the Utah Physicians for a Healthy Environment did something brilliant. They didn't just complain about the Diesel brothers. They went out and bought one of their modified trucks to have it independently tested. What they discovered was absolutely devastating. The truck was producing 36 times more pollution than a stock vehicle and pumping out 21 times more particulate matter, IMDS, the tiny invisible particles that get deep into your lungs and cause serious health problems. To put this in perspective, we're talking about a 30% increase in harmful chemicals from just one vehicle. Dr. Brian Moench, one of the physicians involved in the lawsuit, called these modified trucks disease-generating machines that were contributing to everything from heart attacks and strokes to cancer and birth defects. The evidence was so damning that it painted a picture of environmental terrorism disguised as entertainment. The detailed breakdown of this shocking truth reveals a systematic operation that spanned nearly a decade and affected thousands of vehicles across the country. Court documents obtained by our investigation show that the Diesel brothers weren't just modifying a few trucks for their television show, they were running a massive commercial operation that stripped pollution controls from hundreds of vehicles and sold them to customers who had no idea they were buying illegal machines. The process was methodical and deliberate. They would take modern diesel trucks equipped with sophisticated emission control systems, ADC, technology that had taken decades to develop and billions of dollars to perfect, and systematically remove every component designed to keep the air clean. They installed what are called defeat devices, illegal parts designed to trick the truck's computer and bypass the systems that prevent harmful emissions. The financial scope of the operation was staggering. Internal documents show that Diesel Power Gear, the company created by both Heavy D and Diesel Dave, generated over $59 million in net sales from products related to these illegal modifications. We're not talking about a small side business. This was a massive commercial enterprise built on systematic violations of federal environmental law. The evidence shows that they knew exactly what they were doing and why it was illegal. Multiple sources confirm that the company received numerous warnings from environmental groups and government agencies, but instead of complying with the law, they used their television platform to mock environmental regulations and portray themselves as victims of government overreach. The most shocking part is how they used their fame and influence to normalize environmental destruction. Every episode that showed trucks rolling coal, producing those signature clouds of black smoke, was essentially a commercial for illegal activity. They turned environmental crimes into entertainment, and millions of fans cheered them on without realizing they were watching systematic violations of federal law. The immediate reactions and fallout were absolutely explosive when the first lawsuit was filed in 2017. The Diesel community was split down the middle, with hardcore fans defending their heroes, while environmental groups celebrated what they saw as long overdue accountability. The Diesel brothers initially dismissed the lawsuit as the work of environmental extremists who didn't understand American values or automotive culture. But behind the scenes, panic was setting in. Sources close to the inner circle describe emergency meetings where lawyers explained the potential consequences of the charges. The Clean Air Act violations weren't just civil matters. They carried the potential for criminal charges, massive fines, and even prison time. The reality of their situation was finally sinking in, but it was already too late to undo years of systematic environmental crimes. The legal strategy that emerged was pure defiance. Instead of acknowledging wrongdoing and working toward a settlement, Heavy D and his team decided to fight the charges in court while using their television platform to rally public support. They portrayed themselves as victims of government overreach, small business owners being persecuted by environmental extremists who wanted to destroy American jobs and automotive culture. The social media explosion was unlike anything the automotive world had ever seen. The comment sections turned into digital battlegrounds, with millions of fans defending the Diesel brothers, while environmental groups shared evidence of the health impacts of their illegal modifications. Hashtags like #DieselStrong and #CleanAirMatters trended for weeks, with celebrities and politicians weighing in on both sides of the controversy. The evidence we're about to show you is so damning, you need to hype this video to help us expose the truth that powerful people want buried. The social media war revealed just how effectively the Diesel brothers had used their platform to normalize environmental destruction and turn their fans against environmental protection efforts. The internet turned into detectives when the first court documents became public, and what amateur investigators uncovered was even more shocking than the original lawsuit. Social media sleuths began analyzing every episode of Diesel Brothers, documenting each instance of illegal modifications and creating detailed timelines that prosecutors would later use as evidence in federal court. Reddit communities dedicated to automotive content became investigative hubs where users shared technical knowledge about emission control systems and documented the specific illegal modifications shown on television. YouTube channels emerged dedicated to explaining the environmental and health impacts of the Diesel brothers' practices, with some videos garnering millions of views and sparking national conversations about corporate responsibility and environmental protection. The crowdsourced investigation revealed patterns that even professional investigators had missed. Fans turned critics documented how the show's content had evolved over time, becoming increasingly extreme and openly defiant of environmental regulations. They created databases of every truck featured on the show, tracking which vehicles had been illegally modified and estimating the total environmental impact of the Diesel brothers' operations. Multiple insider sources and leaked evidence began emerging as the legal pressure intensified, and former employees started coming forward with shocking revelations about the company's internal culture. Documents obtained by our investigation reveal a workplace where environmental regulations were openly mocked and employees were encouraged to find creative ways to circumvent federal law. One former employee, speaking on condition of anonymity, described meetings where Heavy D would joke about tree huggers and government bureaucrats who didn't understand real American values. The source revealed that environmental compliance was seen as an obstacle to profit rather than a legal requirement, and employees who raised concerns about potential legal consequences were dismissed or marginalized. Leaked internal communications show that the company was aware of the legal risks from the beginning, but chose to proceed anyway, believing that their fame and public support would protect them from serious consequences. Email chains obtained by investigators reveal discussions about how to market illegal modifications without explicitly admitting they were breaking federal law. The most damning evidence came from former customers who had purchased illegally modified trucks and later discovered they were driving vehicles that failed emissions tests and couldn't be legally registered in many states. These customers described feeling betrayed and deceived, having trusted the Diesel brothers' reputation without realizing they were buying illegal vehicles that could result in fines and legal problems. Behind the scenes, power struggles were tearing the Diesel brothers' partnership apart as the legal pressure intensified and the financial costs of their legal battles began mounting. Sources close to both men describe a relationship that had been deteriorating for years, with fundamental disagreements about the direction of their business and their response to legal challenges. The contrast between Heavy D and Diesel Dave became more pronounced as the crisis deepened. While Heavy D embraced a defiant public stance and used social media to rally support, Diesel Dave reportedly preferred a more conciliatory approach that focused on compliance and damage control. Multiple sources confirm that Diesel Dave was increasingly uncomfortable with the company's legal exposure and wanted to settle the lawsuits rather than fight them in court. The power struggle reached a breaking point when it became clear that Diesel Dave's name was not included in the final judgment of the Clean Air Act case. Court documents show that while Heavy D, Joshua Stewart, Redbeard, and Caton Hoskins, the Muscle, were all named and fined, Diesel Dave was conspicuously absent from the list of defendants. This revelation sparked speculation about whether Diesel Dave had been deliberately kept out of the illegal activities or had cooperated with investigators to avoid prosecution. The financial and legal implications were staggering and went far beyond what anyone had initially imagined. The original Clean Air Act lawsuit resulted in an $850,000 fine, but that was just the beginning. When the Diesel brothers lost their appeal, they were also ordered to pay nearly $1 million in legal fees to the environmental groups that had sued them, bringing their total liability to almost $2 million. But the Clean Air Act case was only one front in a multi-front legal war that was systematically destroying the Diesel brothers' empire. While the public was focused on the environmental lawsuit, a second legal battle was raging behind the scenes that would prove even more financially devastating than the first. But that's not even the most shocking part. While Heavy D was publicly fighting the environmental lawsuit and portraying himself as a victim of government overreach, his empire was being attacked from a completely different direction in a legal battle that would ultimately prove even more devastating than the Clean Air Act violations. The second war was against Diesel S.p.A., the Italian fashion giant known worldwide for its high-end jeans and apparel. This wasn't about environmental crimes or public health. This was about intellectual property theft and trademark infringement on a massive scale. The fashion company claimed that the Diesel brothers had systematically stolen their brand name and used it to build a multi-million-dollar empire without permission. The accusations were simple but devastating. Diesel S.p.A. argued that when people saw merchandise with Diesel Power Gear or Diesel Sellers logos, they might think it was connected to the famous fashion brand that had been trademarked since the 1970 seconds. The Italian company had built a global empire worth billions of dollars, and they weren't about to let some truck builders from Utah profit from their brand recognition. New evidence emerged that painted an even more damning picture of deliberate trademark infringement. Court documents revealed that the Diesel brothers had actual knowledge of the Diesel trademarks when they started using the name on their products. Even worse, the evidence showed they continued using the name even after receiving cease and desist letters from the fashion brand's lawyers, explicitly telling them to stop. The timeline of events revealed a pattern of deliberate defiance that mirrored their approach to environmental regulations. When the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office initially rejected Diesel Power Gear's attempt to register their brand name, the Diesel brothers didn't back down. Every time they kept using the name anyway, apparently believing that their fame and public support would protect them from legal consequences. Internal communications obtained by the court showed that the Diesel brothers were well aware of the trademark issues but chose to proceed anyway, calculating that the profits from using the Diesel name would outweigh any potential legal costs. This evidence of willful infringement would later prove crucial in determining the massive financial penalties they would face. The scope of the trademark infringement was staggering. Court documents showed that Diesel Power Gear had generated over $59 million in net sales from products that illegally used the Diesel trademark. We're talking about a systematic commercial operation that built its success on stolen intellectual property, generating tens of millions in profits while violating federal trademark law. Key players' desperate responses revealed the panic that was setting in as the legal walls closed in from multiple directions. Heavy D's public statements became increasingly erratic and defensive, with social media posts that alternated between defiant bravado and desperate appeals for public support. His attempts to portray both lawsuits as attacks on American values and small business owners rang increasingly hollow as evidence of systematic lawbreaking continued to emerge. Diesel Dave's response was notably different and much more subdued. Sources close to him describe a man who was increasingly distancing himself from the legal battles and focusing on his family and personal faith. His absence from public statements about the trademark lawsuit was particularly notable. leading to speculation that he was either not involved in the trademark decisions or was cooperating with investigators to minimize his own legal exposure. The legal teams representing both men began pursuing different strategies as it became clear that their interests were no longer aligned. While Heavy D's lawyers maintained an aggressive, confrontational approach that portrayed their client as a victim of corporate bullying and government overreach, sources suggest that Diesel Dave's legal representation was more focused on damage control and minimizing his personal liability. Public opinion shifted dramatically as the evidence of systematic lawbreaking became impossible to ignore. The Diesel community that had once rallied around the Diesel brothers began to fracture, with many fans expressing disappointment and betrayal. Environmental groups celebrated what they saw as vindication of their long-standing concerns, while trademark attorneys used the case as an example of the serious consequences of willful intellectual property theft. Your hype points are literally helping us fund more investigations like this. Hit that button if you want us to keep digging deeper. The shift in public opinion was particularly evident in social media engagement, where supportive comments were increasingly outnumbered by criticism and calls for accountability. This isn't just about Heavy D and Diesel Dave anymore. The collapse of the Diesel brothers' empire has sent shock waves through the entire automotive industry, forcing companies, television networks, and content creators to confront the reality that fame and entertainment value can't protect them from the consequences of systematic lawbreaking. The Discovery Channel, which had built a significant portion of its automotive programming around the Diesel brothers brand, found itself in an impossible position. Internal sources describe emergency meetings where network executives grappled with the realization that they had been broadcasting systematic violations of federal law to millions of viewers for 7 seasons. The network's initial response was damage control, quietly distancing itself from the show while avoiding any admission of responsibility for the content they had promoted. The automotive aftermarket industry, which had embraced the Diesel brothers as ambassadors and influencers, suddenly found itself under scrutiny from environmental groups and federal regulators. Companies that had sponsored the show or partnered with Heavy D and Diesel, Dave began conducting internal reviews of their own practices, terrified that they might be implicated in the environmental crimes or face similar legal challenges. Industry-wide panic and changes swept through the automotive content creation world, as creators realized that the legal protections they thought they had were largely illusory. YouTube channels, social media influencers, and television shows that featured automotive modifications began consulting with lawyers and reviewing their content to ensure they weren't inadvertently promoting illegal activities. The Society of Automotive Engineers and other professional organizations issued new guidelines for content creators, emphasizing the importance of environmental compliance and legal responsibility. Trade publications that had once celebrated the Diesel brothers' success began publishing articles about the legal risks of automotive content creation and the importance of understanding federal regulations. Parts manufacturers and aftermarket companies that had built their marketing strategies around rolling coal and extreme modifications found themselves scrambling to rebrand their products and distance themselves from illegal applications. The entire coal rolling subculture, which had been normalized and celebrated by the Diesel brothers, suddenly found itself under legal and social scrutiny. The insurance industry also felt the impact, with companies beginning to ask more detailed questions about vehicle modifications and refusing to cover vehicles that had been illegally modified. This created a cascade effect that made it increasingly difficult and expensive for consumers to own and operate the types of vehicles that the Diesel brothers had popularized. Other celebrities and figures in the automotive world found themselves under increased scrutiny as environmental groups and federal regulators began taking a closer look at content that promoted potentially illegal modifications. Several high-profile automotive influencers quietly removed content that featured emission control system modifications, while others issued public statements emphasizing their commitment to environmental compliance. The ripple effects extended beyond the automotive world into the broader entertainment industry. Reality television producers began implementing new legal review processes for shows that featured potentially regulated activities, while streaming platforms developed new content guidelines that specifically addressed environmental and safety concerns. Professional racing organizations, which had maintained an uneasy relationship with the outlaw culture promoted by shows like Diesel Brothers, began emphasizing their own environmental initiatives and distancing themselves from illegal street modifications. NASCAR, NHRA, and other sanctioning bodies issued statements clarifying that their regulated racing activities were completely separate from the illegal modifications promoted by some television shows. The legal profession also felt the impact, with environmental law and intellectual property attorneys reporting increased demand for their services, as companies and content creators sought to understand their legal exposure. Law schools began using the Diesel Brothers case as a teaching example of how entertainment and social media success cannot protect individuals or companies from the consequences of systematic lawbreaking. The cultural and social implications of the Diesel Brothers collapse extended far beyond the automotive world, touching on fundamental questions about corporate responsibility, environmental protection, and the role of social media in normalizing illegal behavior. The case became a flashpoint in broader debates about climate change, government regulation, and the responsibility of content creators to consider the social impact of their work. Environmental groups used the case as evidence that stronger enforcement of environmental regulations was necessary, while free market advocates argued that the legal system had worked as intended by holding lawbreakers accountable regardless of their fame or public support. The debate revealed deep cultural divisions about the proper balance between individual freedom and collective responsibility for environmental protection. The case also highlighted the power of social media and entertainment platforms to shape public opinion and normalize behavior that might otherwise be considered unacceptable. Academic researchers began studying the Diesel Brothers phenomenon as an example of how charismatic personalities and entertaining content could be used to promote illegal activities and undermine public support for environmental protection. Where everyone stands now is a testament to how quickly fame and fortune can evaporate when built on a foundation of systematic lawbreaking. Heavy D, once the king of diesel culture and a television star with millions of fans, now faces a legal and financial nightmare that has destroyed his empire and left him fighting for his freedom and reputation. The arrest on October 7th, 2025, marked the lowest point in Heavy D's spectacular fall from grace. After spending 3 days in the Salt Lake County Jail, he was released following a contempt hearing where his lawyer presented what Heavy D claimed was exonerating evidence. However, court documents suggest that his release was contingent on finally providing the financial information that the court had been demanding, rather than representing a legal victory on the merits of his case. Diesel Dave's current status remains largely mysterious, with the man who was once Heavy D's closest partner and business associate maintaining an almost complete public silence about the legal battles that have destroyed their shared empire. Sources close to him describe a man who is focused on his family and personal faith, deliberately distancing himself from the controversy while trying to rebuild his life away from the spotlight that once made him famous. The latest developments and updates continue to unfold at a breakneck pace, with new revelations and legal filings emerging regularly. The trademark lawsuit against Diesel Power Gear resulted in a staggering $1.8 million judgment that represents one of the largest trademark infringement awards in recent automotive industry history. This judgment, combined with the environmental fines and legal fees, has created a financial burden that appears to have completely overwhelmed the Diesel Brothers' resources. The court-ordered asset freeze that prevented Heavy D from selling his property and vehicles remains in effect, creating a surreal situation where the man who once gave away custom trucks on television is now prohibited from disposing of his own possessions. The Everything Must Go sale that was supposed to fund his legal defense was shut down by federal court order, leaving him trapped in a legal and financial prison of his own making. Recent court filings suggest that the legal battles are far from over, with ongoing disputes about asset disclosure, compliance with court orders, and the calculation of additional penalties and interest. Environmental groups are pushing for criminal charges beyond the civil penalties already imposed, while trademark attorneys are monitoring the case for precedents that could affect other intellectual property disputes. The Discovery Channel has quietly distanced itself from the Diesel Brothers brand, with no announcements about future seasons or related programming. Industry sources suggest that the network is conducting its own internal review of the content it promoted and may face additional legal exposure if it's determined that they knowingly broadcast illegal activities. The ongoing legal and professional consequences continue to mount as the full scope of the Diesel Brothers' legal exposure becomes clear. The environmental fines and trademark judgments represent only the beginning of what could be a cascade of additional legal challenges from customers, business partners, and regulatory agencies. Former customers who purchased illegally modified vehicles are beginning to file their own lawsuits, claiming they were deceived about the legal status of their purchases and demanding compensation for vehicles that can't be legally registered or operated in many jurisdictions. These individual lawsuits could potentially dwarf the original environmental and trademark judgments if they result in class action status. Business partners and sponsors who are associated with the Diesel Brothers brand are conducting their own legal reviews to determine their potential exposure and liability. Some companies have already filed insurance claims related to their association with the brand, while others are pursuing legal action to recover sponsorship fees and marketing investments. This is the kind of content that changes industries. Show your support by hyping this video so more people see what's really happening. The professional consequences extend beyond the immediate legal penalties, with Heavy D and Diesel Dave effectively blacklisted from the mainstream automotive industry and entertainment world. What's coming next in the Diesel Brothers saga promises to be even more explosive than what we've already witnessed. Legal experts predict that the criminal charges that environmental groups have been demanding are likely inevitable, given the scope and systematic nature of the environmental crimes that have been documented. Federal prosecutors are reportedly reviewing the case for potential criminal violations of the Clean Air Act, which could result in prison time for the key players involved. The financial consequences are likely to continue mounting as additional lawsuits are filed, and the full scope of the Diesel Brothers' legal exposure becomes clear. Bankruptcy appears to be a distinct possibility, which would trigger additional legal proceedings and potentially expose even more details about the company's operations and financial structure. The asset freeze that currently prevents Heavy D from disposing of his property could be just the beginning of a complete financial liquidation. The trademark judgment against Diesel Power Gear is likely to trigger additional intellectual property lawsuits from other companies that believe their trademarks or copyrights were infringed. The precedent set by the $1.8 million judgment sends a clear message that willful trademark infringement will result in severe financial penalties, regardless of the infringer's fame or public support. The automotive industry is likely to see increased regulatory scrutiny and enforcement as a direct result of the Diesel Brothers case. Environmental groups are using the case as evidence that stronger enforcement mechanisms are needed, while federal agencies are likely to increase their monitoring of automotive content and aftermarket modifications. This could result in new regulations and enforcement actions that affect the entire industry. The entertainment industry is also likely to implement new content review processes and legal safeguards to avoid similar situations in the future. Television networks, streaming platforms, and social media companies are all reviewing their policies and procedures to ensure they don't inadvertently promote illegal activities or expose themselves to legal liability. Unresolved mysteries and questions continue to swirl around the case, creating ongoing intrigue and speculation that keeps the story alive in public consciousness. The most significant mystery remains the exact nature of Diesel Dave's role in the illegal activities and why his name was conspicuously absent from the final environmental judgment. This has led to widespread speculation about whether he cooperated with investigators, was deliberately kept out of the illegal activities, or negotiated some kind of separate agreement with prosecutors. The relationship between Heavy D and Diesel Dave remains one of the most compelling, unresolved aspects of the story. Former friends and business partners who once appeared inseparable on television now seem to be pursuing completely different legal and personal strategies. The silence from Diesel Dave's camp is particularly intriguing, given his previously prominent role in the partnership and his continued absence from public statements about the legal battles. The role of the Discovery Channel and other corporate partners in the illegal activities remains largely unexplored, with questions about what they knew and when they knew it still unanswered. Internal communications and decision-making processes at these companies could reveal additional layers of responsibility and liability that haven't yet been exposed. Potential future revelations could completely reshape our understanding of the case and reveal even more shocking details about the scope and systematic nature of the illegal activities. Ongoing investigations by federal agencies could uncover additional environmental crimes or reveal connections to other illegal activities that haven't yet been disclosed. The possibility of criminal charges being filed could trigger plea negotiations that result in cooperation agreements and the disclosure of additional information about the company's operations and the involvement of other parties. If Heavy D or other defendants decide to cooperate with prosecutors, the resulting revelations could implicate additional individuals and companies in the illegal activities. The asset disclosure process that led to Heavy D's release from jail could reveal additional details about the company's financial structure and the extent of the profits generated from illegal activities. This information could trigger additional civil lawsuits and regulatory actions that further expand the scope of the legal consequences. Final community engagement and subscription drive. We're about to reveal the most shocking part, but first, if this expose has blown your mind, give it the hype it deserves. The Diesel Brothers story represents more than just the fall of two television personalities. It's a cautionary tale about the consequences of building success on systematic lawbreaking and the power of social media to both create and destroy reputations. The ongoing legal battles and unresolved questions ensure that this story will continue to evolve and generate new revelations for months or years to come. The precedents being set by the environmental and trademark judgments will have lasting impacts on the automotive industry, entertainment world, and regulatory enforcement that extend far beyond the immediate parties involved. The cultural and social implications of the case continue to resonate through debates about environmental protection, corporate responsibility, and the role of entertainment in shaping public attitudes toward illegal behavior. The Diesel Brothers phenomenon serves as a case study in how charismatic personalities and entertaining content can be used to normalize activities that cause real harm to public health and the environment. As we continue to follow this developing story and investigate the broader implications of the Diesel Brothers collapse, we're committed to bringing you the most comprehensive and accurate coverage available. The truth about what really happened behind the scenes of one of television's most popular automotive shows is still being revealed, and the full scope of the legal, financial, and social consequences may not be known for years to come. Stay tuned for our continued coverage of this explosive story, and make sure to hype this video to help us continue our investigative work into the cases that powerful people want buried. The Diesel Brothers saga is far from over, and the most shocking revelations may still be yet to come.